So hello, everybody. Welcome to our Q&A screening of our time machine. My name is Claire Aguilar, and I am a documentary consultant. I've worked a lot in documentary, and I'm really pleased to be able to host this discussion after you've screened the beautiful film, Our Time Machine, by Young Soon and Leo Chiang that we have with us today. Originally, we were going to have Grace Lee do the Q&A, and I was going to just do the intro, but unfortunately, Grace is indisposed and she has to take care of some business, so she won't be able to join us today. But I hope that it's okay if I just take the reins and moderate you guys through this really amazing film and discussion about it. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. But first, let me introduce the director, the co-director of the film, Leo Chiang, who's on screen with us now.
Hi, Claire. Thank you for having this conversation with me. This is my fourth Q&A today, so I'm gonna try to think of new and interesting things to say. But I'm looking forward to talking about Our Time Machine.
Great. Wow. Well, Leo, first of all, such a beautiful film. Thank you. It's such a gift. And I think especially during our kind of lockdown COVID time, when we think about so many issues that come up in the film, such as solitude, taking care of our loved ones, memory and history and everything. But why don't we start with a question? Let me just mention to our participants that if you have a question, we'll save them for the end, and you can go in the chat box and put your questions down. And then at the end, I can go through them and then we can respond to them. But first, let's just speak generally about the film and then we can do that. So how did you get involved in this project? And especially, what is your collaboration with Yong Soon? And also, how did you meet the artist Malian?
The project was originated actually by Young. Young at that point, which we started in 2015, he was a young filmmaker. You know, he was in his mid-20s, based in Shanghai, and he was connected to Ma Liang because Ma Liang wanted somebody to do a behind-the-scenes video for the play that he was starting to put together, which ended up to be the puppet performance that we see in the film Papa's Time Machine. But when Young learned about Ma Liang's that one story, the swimming pool story that Ma Liang shares in the film, he was sort of moved, you know, in a way that he felt like the project was going to be more than just a making of or behind the scenes video, that he wanted to explore potentially making it into a larger piece. So he started to shoot with Ma Liang for a little bit. And I, you know, found out about the project actually at the CNEX, the Chinese Documentary Pitching Forum here in Taipei in late 2015, about 5-6 months after Sun Yang started the project. He showed 3 minutes of the material, and I felt like somebody sort of punched me in the gut, but in the best way. I don't know if there's such a thing. It just felt like I was so I was so moved, but I couldn't even articulate why at the moment. I just felt so connected to Ma Liang's, you know, the journey that he was going to embark, and his relationship with his father, and his fear, and his you know, all of his you know, worries about what's going to happen with the Alzheimer's disease, and how that's going to impact his family and his you know, himself. I felt like I just had to get involved in this project. I wanted to help the project come to life. So I actually went up to Young, and actually alongside our executive producer, Jean Chan, who was there at the same time. We came up to him um, at the same time, and kind of offer our help. And I initially came on as a producer, but it became really quickly very obvious that the film needed my perspective as somebody who was in his 40s. Ma Liang and I are the same age, and the film is very much about the struggle of somebody, an artist, coming into his middle age, and really examining everything about his life, including his relationship with his parents. So we decided that it makes a lot of sense for us to collaborate fully as producer directors. So yeah, so that was the beginning of it. And then we finished the film in 2018 and premiered at Tribeca in 2019.
2019. And what about Malian? He's such an incredible artist, and his use of different media, whether it's puppetry, photography, the shadow, I mean, he's almost like what is his I mean, it's just very interesting because you see artists that have used either photography or puppetry, but does he use puppetry in all of his art?
He's a fascinating artist. He's actually, so his core medium is photography. That he does photography, but he also is a sculptor. He also is a writer. He's actually published three books of essays. Um, I think that the family is extremely artistic. The father, my aunt's father, Marke, is this, as you know from the film, a very well known picking up art director. His mom is actually a super well known actress. She was in a really famous TV show. It's so funny. Every time we show this film to a Chinese audience, people will come up to us and, "Oh my God, I didn't know that my aunt's mom was Miss Tong is in this really famous role on
Recognize
a
her.
TV series." So I think that all his life, he was trying to express himself through art, and um, he just has this really unique vision. I think that he combines sort of humor and innocence, and in a way that's really disarming, but he tackles these really serious existential issues about life and time and memory and all of that, and you can see that in all of his work. And we're lucky as filmmakers to have that as a subject, because we get to capture his work with our camera, and to be able to show the beauty in his work, and the power in his work. One of the things that we always talked about is like the puppets. For instance, the puppets. I mean, if Ma Liang was a more experienced theater artist, right? Like this is something that he just decides to take on because of his father. If Ma Liang was a more experienced theater artist, he would know that he didn't have to have the kind of detail, the kind of intricate, nuance in the puppets that because you would never see it on stage in a performance. But he did not. To him, he had to make it perfect and just precise, because he's a perfectionist and he's a sculptor. And it's not going to be seen in the theater, but our camera see it. Our camera sees it. Our camera captures all the details, and it just we were fortunate to have that.
You have this incredible visual style of Malian, but also the film is such a visual feast. You've even garnered a lot of prizes, and as a matter of fact, the film has won a lot of prizes and accolades, best film in several film festivals, and prizes for cinematography. And can you talk about that kind of visual cinematographic strategy? Because you're matched between this art, which is so beautiful, everything from the shadow play to the puppets and the detail that you spoke about.
We it was something that we were wondering if it's going to work, because we were leaning into two elements that felt like very different. One is this very realistic observational handheld camera material of us capturing the family as they, especially with the parents, as they go through their day-to-day and struggling with this particular often devastating illness. At the same time, we had this really sort of surreal, out of this world artwork that we decided to do it in a much more stylized, probably not often documentary, considered stylistically not considered to be part of the documentary language. We use dollies and crane shots, and we use very stylized lighting. We had these puppets acted out scenes that are totally produced, lit as if it was a fiction film. And it was a risk to see if the two styles were going to work together. But we kind of felt like it would, because we wanted to have these two worlds, right? Like there are several aspects about this film that's about contrast. The main story, the film itself it consists of the two threads. One is the production of the play, and one is the family story, as they cope with the father's aging and illness. And we always love the idea of the life imitating art, imitating life aspect of it. But there is this contrast. So visually, we had the same contrast. We had this sort of the traditional observational cinema verite thread of the family scenes, and then we have these surreal, magical, realistic scenes of the puppet world, of the dream world, if you will. And we had that dream sequence in the middle of the film, which I really love, which if you look at it, actually makes no sense at all. It's that black and white sequence about kind of the puppets haunting Ma Liang. And like we presented as like it might be a dream of the little puppet. It might be a dream of Ma Liang, but the point is that this is the moment when everything seems to be closing in. So we were playing with all these different elements. And on top of it, we also had Ma Liang's footage. A lot of the shadow puppetry was his work. He shot it to be included, to be used in the performance, and he was generous enough to share it with us. So we were able to use that strategically in the film as well. So there's actually quite a variety of different visual styles in the film, and I think that worked to our advantage.
I think it works really well and it's so seamless, because as you say, you have the verite and observational and then these dream kind of like sequences, but it works. And, but you can see the care of the production quality in it too. Let's talk a little bit about that family story that you alluded to, which is, that's like the most poignant story, about a son who's, an artist who is has a father who's losing his memory and also wanting to kind of rekindle that relationship with his father that was difficult for him to achieve, first of all. And when he finally has it, suddenly his father's memory is gone. Was that something that was kind of part of the concept of the film, or did that just come out? And also, I have to say that the family is very at ease with the camera. Maybe because they're theater people, I don't know. But they,
That's exactly it. This is a family of performers, right? Even though dad is a director in the Peking opera tradition, you are trained as a performer from very young age. I think that he went into theater school when he was like 6 years old. I mean, that's what you had to do to train for the physical part. There's the acrobatic part of the Peking opera. And mom, as I mentioned, is a well-known actress. So, and on top of it, I think that especially for the parents, they loved having us around. They loved that, I think from their perspective, we are the next generation of storyteller, of artists coming and curious about their work. I think that they enjoy, that aspect of it. Young, my film partner was the primary cinematographer on the project. And to them, he's this, grandson that they don't have. And Young will show up and eat their food and crash on their couch and, hang out with them everywhere. I think they really enjoy that. Ma Liang was a slightly different story. I think that as an artist in the middle of a kind of a high stress project, there's definitely some push and pull in terms of our access with him. But ultimately, I think that he recognized that we were telling the same story that he was trying to tell, this family story. And for me, that's obviously what drew me to the story. Yes, the visual, the magical, fantastical visual was a huge bonus, and it made the film, that much better. But for me, it's because of this really universal resonant family story that made the film ultimately work. And it really, I think that as somebody who's entering middle age, as somebody who is watching, his parents starting to age, it was it felt like it was autobiographical in a sort of a bizarre way. I really related to Ma Liang, not just as a subject, but I just felt like I understood him in the most basic way. And I think he feels the same way about me. Like, I think we have this connection, that it's not just the part about the family, but it's also the one strand that we address in the film, which is the life of an artist, the life of somebody who's in a creative field, who do this really illogical thing that we all do, which is to tell stories and create, even though, and I give this advice to students all the time. It's like, if you can do something else besides filmmaking, like don't do it because it's so much struggle, it's so little resources, so much struggle, it's so much of your life, invested into this thing. But if you feel like there's nothing else you can do, and you cannot help yourself by doing, besides doing this, then you do it. And I felt like we also related, Ma Liang and I, on that aspect of sort of being so compelled to do something that is probably not the most logical thing to do. So
I
and
think
and
I think just by seeing, I mean, your connection with him, but also his looking at his father, who's an artist, and at the end of his life, I mean, in a way, Malayan at this point is kind of confronting his own kind of creative life. He's the mid-career artist, if you will, right? It's like, when am I going to continue, and what's going to happen to me? It's kind of dealing with his own creative mortality in a way, right? And maybe that's something that, and then giving life, or having the child. um, there's a question that came up, and I know we're going to wait till the end, but it pertains to this thing about the family relationships. And the question is, they wanted to know, like, what is the epilogue for all of the family members? Because I don't think there's a problem with spoilers, because everybody's seen the film, but the parents have gone into a nursing home. Malayan did the play, and then he got together with his partner, asked her to marry him, and then they had a baby. So can you give us an update on everyone since
um,
then?
yes. The baby is now 2.5 years old. We just did a Q&A with Ma Liang in his home studio in Shanghai, where we brought back the little puppet Makuji, and the baby Deng Deng was just having a ball with the puppet. She was tickling the puppet, she was giggling, they were going back and forth, and Madame kept saying, um, look, it's your older brother. It's your older brother. So they're both Ma Liang's children. So the nuclear family is doing very well. Ma Liang is continuing to do work. He did one more puppet piece after Papa's Time Machine, which is much more of a moving sculpture, where he built this like 2-story tall, like 1-story tall puppet, and interacted with audiences directly instead of it performing something. And then he's back to doing photography. He actually had a show. He had a project planned in Japan this year that was scrapped because of COVID. But he's, in China, things are pretty open right now. So he's been having, openings in different cities. So he's quite busy. The parents are doing okay. The COVID was difficult for the parents because they weren't able to see the grandkid, and they weren't able to see Ma Liang and Tianyi because of the quarantine, or the shutdown. But things are opening back up, so they are able to visit each other again. Um, Dad had a fall, and but he seems to be doing okay. He just can't move around as much. He is almost 90 years old, so he is getting up there. Mom is fine. I think mom is in a much better place, being in an environment where she's not the primary caregiver. That they are there are nurses and other caretakers to help. The dad's
That's,
memory,
yeah. No, I
yeah,
was gonna
dad's
ask the
memory
same
got
thing. That's,
worse.
it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse. He's not remembering Ma Liang's name. I'm not even sure that he's remembering Ma Liang as his son. He keeps calling Ma Liang the big guy. The big guy is coming to visit again. Here's the big guy. So yeah. So I think that the family is doing as well as it can be expected, and the illness continues and the aging process continues, but life also continues in general, I think, in this family.
And Alzheimer's, and just, it's something that is touching all societies and every culture. And is there something, how is it affecting people in China? Because it seems that, when we first see Dad, it's like he's pretty alert. He remembers everything. He's kind of, revolutionary, and then by the end, he has deteriorated quite a bit. Um,
Um,
is
you
it as
know,
prevalent, do you think, as it is?
yeah, I think for the Chinese culture has an interesting relationship with dementia and Alzheimer's. For a long time, there was a term, the Chinese term for Alzheimer's, for dementia, is actually called 老年痴呆症, which means old age, like dumb and confused. These are very harsh words to describe the symptom,
It's kind of
and
pejorative.
it's very pejorative, and it's tabooed, and families tend to hide their elders who suffer dementia at home. They kind of dismiss the symptom as something sort of a little embarrassed about. And also the younger generation are just expect to take care of the older generation fully without any kind of medical help. But that's really changing, over the last few years in China. There's been much more of an acknowledgement of it being a public health issue. There's more developed support, both um, in the medical setting, but also just in the community setting, where people are kind of building support for the caregivers. There's now a new term for it. It's called 失智症, which means that it's a loss of cognitive ability. It's an illness that involves a loss of cognitive ability. So there is definitely a shift in terms of how um, Chinese people see aging. But it's very, very much prevalent in China. It's very common to see elders suffering from dementia, unfortunately.
There's a question pertaining to Alzheimer's that just came up about music and the impression on patients with Alzheimer's. Did you use music in a way to either relate or trigger Dad's memory, or were you conscious of the effect of music on
What
him?
so there's a couple moments in the film where you see Dad. The first scene was Dad and Ma Liang singing, a piece from one of the famous Peking opera performance plays. And then later on, you see Dad hiking and he's singing another solo. Um, I don't know how much of the show, how much of the music that he remembers, but that he was continuing to go to see live performances, and I would assume that that's probably something that stays with him much longer. You know, dementia and Alzheimer's, the first things to erode is short-term memory, and the music, especially the traditional Peking opera music, is something that is, you know, very much a part of him since he was a young child. So the hope is that that's something that kind of continues to stay with him. So I know that there's been really wonderful work, and actually I think that there was a documentary that was made about, you know, music, with folks with dementia and Alzheimer's, and it sort of brings me some happiness and some relief to know that, even the folks who are really suffering, that they can still have music, that they can connect to, that can touch them, you know, um, when they're maybe not as responsive or not able to communicate in other ways.
Yeah, well, it's so, it just sort of brings out the unconscious in a way that just regular cognitive memory, it's another dimension in a way. Yeah. There's a question about, well, let's talk about the production because, you did produce in China for the most part. You're in Shanghai, except for certain places. I mean, they go to New York to fundraise and it's not successful, but I think that's kind of funny that they go to New York and they talk to the to the donors there. What was it like well, you have experience doing production in China. What was it like to produce a documentary in China?
Um, the producing of the documentary, so the shooting of it, right, a lot of it took place in China, and Young, my film partners, actually was the primary shooter. I was mostly in San Francisco at the time, and Young being based in Shanghai and having this really great relationship with the Ma family, he did most of the shooting. There was very little problem with shooting in China because we weren't, I mean, if I guess if the question is about the sensitivity of having a documentary camera in China, it's less sensitive than you think. Um, you know, he was able to really more or less go about his business in terms of shooting, especially in a big city like Shanghai. I mean, there's so much production going on. Shanghai is one of the media hubs of China, and there's so much content that's been produced there. So having a small camera walking on the street, or I mean, we were shooting 4 camera shoots in these live performances. It's fine.
Do you have any government restrictions or do you need permits or?
We I don't think we got permits, and we had to get permission from whatever the organizations or the location that we were shooting in, and some of them were public, you know, government owned facilities. A lot of the theaters were. Yeah, that, you know, we were shooting performances. It's not a big deal. The money, most of the funding support actually came from the West, came from US, because that's where my network is, and that's where a lot of my professional life has been. Um, and even though I split my time between Taipei and the US, I was trained in the US. I did most of my work in the US. So we did end up, you know, having this great distribution partner that came on towards the end, that brought in actually quite a significant amount of funding, and set up a few distribution pipelines that was supposed to get executed this year with a theatrical release and with an online streaming release. But it was pushed back because of COVID. So we're going to have that next year. So I think that a film like this, there's no problem. We actually got official permission. We went through the film board. You know, they really went through the censorship process, because there is so little sensitive material deemed by the government. So it's tricky. I think that the thing about the Chinese rules that are difficult to navigate is because there are no rules. That they kind of give you these weird um, restrictions, but they don't define what it is. And in some ways, um, that's achieves exactly what they want, which is that it forces you to self-censor. because you're fearful of maybe including the wrong material. So so you actually kind of err on the side of less rather than more. And it was not, I didn't love the process of going through that at all. It actually, it was difficult. But we got through it because for the most part, the film is about the family, and it's a really universal story about a middle class family that's just confronting life and try to figure out what it means, um, to get older. So we're okay with that.
Yeah, remind me, did you, since it was finished in 2018, so you premiered at Tribeca to live,
2019.
sorry,
19.
2019, so it was a virtual premiere at Tribeca?
No.
No, it was live.
Right. That felt like a lifetime ago. It was
I
live. It was
know.
actually,
What year are we in?
I know. 2020 keeps on giving.
So
Um,
2019 at Tribeca, it was pre-COVID.
it was pre-COVID. We had an amazing premiere screening in New York. Ma Liang did not see the film until we showed in public for the first time. He came to New York. His wife Tianyi came to New York with a baby. The baby didn't see it. The baby was, was with the babysitter. But they came and sat with the audience and watched it for the first time. It was really incredible. It was very emotional. There was a lot of tears on stage and in the audience, and it's really one of those really special moments in my career as a filmmaker that I will just always treasure. Just really was a fabulous experience.
Well, you got in the nick of time because you're able to have the premiere, and then afterward, subsequent to that, most of the festival runs and have been virtual, right?
We actually almost completely finished our round, our year run of festivals, because the COVID shut down. The first one was South by Southwest this year. So
That's right.
between Tribeca last year and South by Southwest this year, we were in a good 60 plus film festivals, and I was able to attend a ton of them. Manang went to, I think, ended up going to 3 or 4, and Young and I went to a good couple dozen. We went to ITFA, we went to DMZ Docs in Seoul. The film Play Everywhere, it won awards at Doc Edge in New Zealand. It won awards and in Minsk, which was something that I'm so proud of, that our film, spoke to folks in New Zealand, in Africa, in Eastern Europe, in Asia. So we were lucky that we were able to do a fairly complete run, and we did towards the end had another dozen or 20 festivals that ended up to be virtual. But you know, I mean, we're grateful. We're grateful for what we were able to achieve, and I really feel for the folks who had to do a virtual run this year, because we all know that one of the great pleasures as filmmakers is to be able to sit in the cinema, sit in the theater and watch a film with an audience and really not even talk to them, but just really sense the reaction, feel the vibe of the room. It's a really beautiful thing.
Well, I think you've done a great job. And folks, if you don't know it, this is Leo's fourth Q&A today, fifth.
What's your name? What's your name? Yes.
I was going to say today was the Q&A extravaganza, staggered times, 5 o'clock in Berlin, New York type. It was in Asia.
Yeah.
And here in LA. So, this is just a great way of getting it done. And I think it's a testament to the film too, because it is such a intimate, beautiful cinematic film. And to see the reaction of people virtually is pretty exciting. Why don't we go into some questions? I think we have a little time for some questions. Let's see. Here's one from Lynn Goldfarb. Hi, Lynn. This is such a lovely, moving, emotional film. I'm curious about the ending. How far into the edit were you when the baby was born? Because it says a year later. Was there a different ending before this wonderful poetic ending came into being?
Hi, Lynn. Thanks for the question. we didn't have an ending. What happened was we were, for a while we were really struggling. We weren't sure that they were, that we even had enough material to make a feature length doc, because we didn't know, how far the father's condition will deteriorate and what's going to happen in Mariang's life. We knew that there was the play. The play was going to be completed and be launched, but we didn't know about the personal uh, the strand of the personal story. But towards the end, and the funny thing is, like, we knew that Manang was starting to date Tianyi, and we were hoping, as documentarians often do, we're hoping they would get married, and then we were hoping that they would have a child, but it was kind of a joke. We were like, oh, it wouldn't be so funny that let's make them get married and have a child so we can have a great ending for our film. Well, they really did get married, and they got pregnant pretty much right away. So what we did was we edited up till the end of the performance, and we knew that there was going to be a scene somehow, that has to do with the baby being born, and to complete this three generation cycle, this sort of circle of life story. But we had no idea though what was gonna be the ending. We didn't know what Madame was going to say. We actually didn't know what we wanted to say. We did not want to, though. However, we were pretty sure that we did not want to have something that sort of wallows in the sort of the difficulties of the situation, because we saw beauty. We saw that he found this unexpected gift, in his life, even though the play didn't necessarily go what he wanted to do, and the father's condition continued to deteriorate. Out of this came this really this beautiful next step of his life. And then when we set him down to do that final interview, um, he talked for about an hour, and I remember this really clearly. Um, Towards the end, we were doing these crazy edit boot camps, because I was in San Francisco. The editor, Bob, who's incredible, is based in Beijing. Um, Yang, my film partner, directing partner, was in Shanghai. So we kind of maxed out on the virtual collaboration, like sort of distance collaboration. So I started renting these Airbnbs where we all come to the same town, live in the same Airbnb, and just edit for 3 weeks straight and not do anything else. So we were sitting in Xiamen, which is a coastal town, actually not far from here in Taiwan. It's right across the Taiwan Straits, probably the closest point to China. Um, and we started watching this interview, and when he told the story, of presenting his baby to his father, we all sort of smiled and chuckled, and we looked at each other, and I remember just really clear, I said, let's not watch anymore. I think this is it. So we took that chunk of interview, and that's about 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes. We plopped it into the cut, and I don't think it's been trimmed since. It felt like that was sort of what it was always meant to be. That was always going to be the ending, and the way he told that story, um, that echoes the swimming pool story about, sort of repetition, the over and over again, that at the beginning, this repetition is was a burden, was something that was dreadful and scary, but at the end, this repetition um, became something that's to be celebrated, to be cherished. I actually, I get a little emotional talking about that ending, because I love the last 20 minutes of the film. I just think that it's something that's something that we're really proud of, and that's something that really really did capture that, the way that beautiful family deal with this particular illness.
Well, you should be. You should be very proud. That was the part that made me cry too, because at that part when he says he has to introduce his granddaughter and it turns into something joyous, it shows the transformative effect that it's had on everybody, including Malian at that point, because it's like he has the joy and the pleasure of introducing his granddaughter to his father every time for 5 times. It's so beautiful. Um, we're kind of getting to the end of our time. Although there are a lot of there's a big long question, a lot of questions about. Well, let me just take one of the aspects of this question, which is interesting. Did you have any reactions to the film, either in China or the US or anywhere, that surprised you? Any reactions that surprised you from audiences?
One that sort of surprised me, and I think that this might be a really Chinese thing. We heard from some of the younger audiences in China, you know, the folks who are in their 20s, that they were angry at Ma Liang for deciding to do the work, to decide to spend his time to do the play instead of staying at home and taking care of his father. I think that that is a very it's definitely a cultural thing. I think that that's how, you know, the Chinese folks are raised, to really prioritize parents, to, you know, kind of place their needs above our own. Not that Ma Liang placed his own need above his parents. I think that what Ma Liang did was what an artist would do. Like, that's when you've confronted with some kind of challenge, or, you know, in life as an artist, you make work. That's what you do. This is the way that he expresses himself. But I also realized that, you know, the older Chinese audience, once you know, folks get into their 30s and 40s, they don't have that same reaction. So that was something that was kind of surprising to me. That's how they felt. Um, but you know, I mean, I think that the other thing that is not necessarily a surprise that I'm proud of is the way that how the story did translate. You know, that people really, if anything, did not have any kinds of difference or differentiation between, you know, the if you speak a different language or come from a different culture background, people really did understand that family story. People understood the essence of this parent-child relationship, and you know, and I mean, I don't know. This sounds a little grandiose, but we really we really knew that we were making a film about life. You know, just it's a very existential film. It's really, yes, it's about this particular family. Yes, it's about this particular moment, but it's really about how we confront any China challenges in life, and what's meaningful to us, what's worth, you know, sacrificing for, and how do we look at what we have and take the next step. So I think that those things are universal. Doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what you are, you know, we all go through those experiences.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful film, and thank you, Leo and Yang, who is out there somewhere, for bringing us to it and introducing us to this incredible set of people. I think right now our time is up, so we're going to have to wrap up. But I wanted to let you know that that the film's available on VOD. It's on Apple, Amazon, and as we said, there's going to be a small release in China next year. So spread the word to all your friends, and let everybody know about it. And also, you can follow social media on the film at Time Machine Film, and the website is timemachinefilm.com. Do you want to close with anything, Leo? Is there something we?
Yeah, I think that because of our Gotham Awards nomination, I think that IFP is gonna do another virtual event next week. So if you know folks who might be interested in our film, you know, please encourage them to check it out. I would love to be able to share more stories with folks. So and thank you so much, Claire, for doing this, and it's great to see you. You know, being in Taiwan, it's I miss my friends horribly in the U.S. And I see also a lot of friends in the audiences. So thank you all for coming and you know, to listen to us chat. Um,
Okay, well,
that's it.
thank you, and best of luck with the long tail of this film. It seems like it's going to have a really great long life, and best to all the participants. And thank you, everybody, for coming and participating in this.